Okay, well, very good afternoon. Welcome everybody to our live Q&A here on the Cheltenham Town website and on the Cheltenham Town YouTube channel. We're going to be joined by some of the higher figures here at Cheltenham Town to talk about, of course, a very important period at the club at the moment, given all that's gone on with the very sad global pandemic related to coronavirus. Of course, it's been a very difficult time for everyone, as much as it has been for us as well as a football club as well. So really important that we get this live chat going today. And thanks ever so much for everyone who sent in all your questions already. We've had so many fantastic questions in. Remember, you can do that during our chat today. You can do it on our YouTube page here on the live chat we've got going. You can do it on Twitter by using the hashtag CTFC as well. We're also going to be having some people coming live onto our call. I'm really pleased to speak to the guys we've got on the call today. And we've got lots of questions that have been sent in already as well, which is absolutely fantastic. But what I'll do first of all is I'll introduce the guys we've got with us here on the call today, who are going to be answering all the questions you've sent in. And we'll start with the chairman, Andy Wilcox. Fantastic to have Andy with us, of course. Been chairman for a couple of seasons now here at the Johnny Rock Stadium, and superb to have Andy with us on the call today. Also, we've got our club secretary, a director, Paul Godfrey as well. Paul is going to be with us answering lots of queries that you've sent in, which is going to be fantastic too. Of course, first team manager Michael Duff is going to be talking to us a lot about some of the football situation and the return to training and so on, and preparing for hopefully the playoffs. And also fantastic to have our director of football, Micky Moore, is also with us live on this chat. So fantastic to have Micky with us, and really pleased to be catching up with him and some of the insight he's going to give us into working with the players as well during what's been a very difficult time. But gents, thanks very much for joining us. Hope you're all well. Just the first question I'm going to ask, actually, I'm just going to quickly direct it to yourself, Michael, because of course we've got Micky on the call, which is fantastic. Can you tell me a bit about Micky and sort of the role he's done? Because I know he's actually been at the football club for quite a while, but this particular role he's in right now is something he's been doing over the last few months, working alongside you and being a bit of a go-between.
Well, first and foremost, Micky came in the club similar sort of time as myself. Andy brought him in, and his title was head of recruitment, but it became quite apparent that Micky did quite a bit more than that, and the club wanted a little bit more joined up thinking in terms of how things are communicated and how things are done through the club. And so they appointed the director of football, and Micky was pretty much doing it out, everything. The detail that he goes into, and he probably do it himself, it's a lot more than just watching games and recommending players, from everything from finding players accommodation, dealing with landladies, to contracts and agents. So he takes a lot of stuff off my plate, which allows me to focus on the football. So it's, we speak regularly. My kids have an ongoing joke now, and they've actually got a song for him, because when the phone goes, it's generally Micky Moore. So it's not Micky Moore, not Micky Moore. It can't be any more Micky Moore or something stupid like that. But no, I think it's a way clubs are moving forward more now, and the relationship works. I think we both trust each other's judgment and bounce off each other a lot. And obviously Micky sits in between me and the board, so rather than me constantly having to ask questions with players and then going up to the board, it helps me sort of manage up and down.
Fantastic, good stuff. I'll be speaking to Micky in a short while, but the first question I'm going to jump in on with is probably one for Paul Godfrey, and also Andy as well may have a viewpoint on this, and it's a big one right now for the fans, and that's on season tickets. We'll start, if we can, with season tickets at the moment for the current season. Both Finlay Donaldson and Mark Halliwell have asked questions related to that. Finlay himself says, I've got 5 more tickets remaining on my season ticket. Will we be getting our money back, or would we be able to swap them and reuse them for tickets next season?
Sorry, do you want to go first, Andy?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll pass it on to you, Paul.
Oh, okay. We've had to ask people to bear with us a little bit, because at the moment we've not got a lot of the office staff are furloughed, so we've had to when you got one person in at the moment who's handling a lot of the inquiries. But we are looking at this very closely. The finance director is working out some figures, and what's likely is that in a few days' time we're going to announce a range of different options. And the first thing to say is a massive thank you to all the people that have already contacted us and said that they don't want a refund on their season tickets. It's a brilliant gesture, really, because, as everyone knows, football clubs are finding it very difficult at the moment with no income, certainly not the normal sources of income that they're accustomed to. So for people to say, I've enjoyed this season, I want to help the club by not receiving a refund on the last 5 games or so. That's brilliant. We can only thank those people. But we appreciate fully, of course, that not everyone's in that position. So there will be an announcement regarding some possible different options that we can come up with, whether that'll involve perhaps vouchers for season ticket or something for next season, whether it will involve the live coverage of the games. We need to get a bit more information in before we can actually make those announcements. But we are working on that at the moment.
And in terms of season tickets for next season, we know we've had so many people asking questions about that. I won't read out all their individual questions because we'll be here a long time. But big thank you for Taron, Rob, Chris Godfrey, Dan Bevan, all asking, and I think we may hear from Dan later on, all asking about season tickets for next season. Have the club considered releasing season tickets for next season yet, despite not knowing that when fans will be able to attend matches again? I think a lot of people actually want to purchase them just to almost give some financial support to the club, which is great.
Again, that's fantastic. Yeah. It's been very difficult because we don't know at this stage when the new season will start, when we'll be able to have supporters inside the ground to watch the games. At some point, I think we will need to draw a line in the sand and make a decision on it, whether we sell the whole season ticket or whether we break it up into sections. Again, no decision's been made on that yet, but it's certainly something that's being considered very closely. The situation's changing all the time. What tends to happen is you go quite a few weeks of frustration and not waiting to hear things, waiting for information to come through, and then it all arrives at once. But certainly we've been told to expect that the new season won't start until September at the earliest. I mean, we've still got to finish this one yet, of course. So there's still quite a long way to go before the new season can even be considered for a beginning. And even then, what form will it take? We're expecting it to be behind closed doors. And if it has to involve a lot of testing of players, then that's going to be expensive. So the league are going to have to work out how that will be funded. But certainly, at this stage, it's probably a little bit early to be talking about season tickets for next season. But it's something that's being considered closely.
Just a final one on season tickets, if that's okay, Paul. Brian Cosgrove, he actually got in touch just to ask about season tickets again for next season with a suggestion that why doesn't the club simply seek 50% from season ticket holders by, say, end of June, and then the other 50% by the end of October, when hopefully it'll be a bit clearer on whether fans can attend matches. As a theory, what are your thoughts on that one from Brian?
Yeah, that's a good idea. That certainly makes sense to me, and that's certainly something. Yeah, one of the things that will be considered when we come to look at it. Certainly, yeah. I mean, the club, the financial position of the club at the moment, as we've said previously, it's not the short term that's the problem. We're probably in a better position than a great many clubs, but the big question mark is what happens in a few months' time if we have to start the new season without being able to have supporters inside the ground. When the government's job retention scheme starts to change as well, we have to take players off furlough, staff off furlough. Then that's when it's going to become a lot more difficult for clubs, and that's certainly when it's going to bring into focus the need to bring in that extra revenue.
Yeah, Andy, just a question for you. We had in from Finley. He says, "Hello, I'd like to ask if there will be a new home or away kit next season."
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. There is going to be a launch sometime in June for a new home shirt. So we are going to have a new home kit that, as far as I know, has been delivered. And I'm just putting that together, obviously with Murray and yourself, Richard, to announce the launch date for that. But yes, we have a new kit, which is very nice and quite exciting. So.
Yeah, great stuff. Looking forward to that. The blue one definitely went down for the away kit very well for the season just gone. We'll just jump into our first football then question, if that's okay. Michael, one for you from Ben Hodge. He says, with the team's great run of form before the lockdown, only losing twice this calendar year, what have you and the staff done to make sure the players are working to a normal schedule in preparations for the playoffs, if and when they happen?
Well, when it first happened, obviously we were on a great run, but it's irrelevant now. The first couple of weeks, obviously the players got given programs weekly and things like that. But obviously since everyone's been put on furlough, we can't have that sort of relationship. So it's more been a trust exercise. It's up to the players to keep themselves fit. We've had Zoom meetings with them as much as to do with just checking in. Are they all right mentally, health-wise? And so that's been more of just a general chat rather than actual work, because obviously with the furlough scheme, we're not allowed to do that. But moving forward, we will all be getting tested tomorrow morning, and then looking to train properly from Monday onwards. And that is when it is full go. They did have bits of classroom work when it first happened. Again, like we said, we discussed, but the run of form is now, that is literally in the past, and it's just a case of cracking on now, finishing the job.
Brilliant. And like I said, we're going to have fans joining us live on the call, I'm delighted to say, and I'm really pleased to say, Martin, can you hear us okay?
Yes, yes, fine, thanks. Hang on.
Brilliant. Thanks for joining us, Martin. Feel free to fire away with your question to anyone who's joining us today.
I've just lost the picture again, so never let a pensioner in charge of a computer. I'll just read it out to you before I get back to you. A question really to Andy and Paul Godfrey. The pandemic has obviously affected football clubs, especially at our level, very hard. What is the present situation with regard to our club, and how could it affect us in the future? And just a caveat to that, have you discussed any solutions where supporters can also raise extra revenue for the club?
Good afternoon, Martin. Yeah, it's been quite a big topic really in discussions with the board over the past few weeks. We meet on Zoom every Friday, and that's when we have our board meetings now. I think going forward, I think Paul made a point earlier that we're okay at the moment as a football club, and probably in a better position than a lot around us, but it's an uncertain future, and we have no real answers to where we're going to be in 3 months, 6 months. So we would need, and I'm sure at some point, to sit down and work a way of where we can ask or certainly interact with the great fan base that we've got to maybe put something together for some help.
I think with something like that, you're talking about crowdfunding, perhaps paying forward of season tickets, these kind of ideas. And we've also, when we come to talk about the playoffs later on, I'm sure we've also, commercial department, have come up with some ideas around those. But the important thing is to have it as a part of a coordinated strategy. We could have kind of panicked and just thrown out loads of ideas and tried to grab a few quid in here and there. But we've taken a more, I suppose you could say, considered approach to it. We've tried to look at the short term, the medium, and the long term in terms of planning for how we're going to deal with it all. So short term, you're just going month to month, really. But then Clive, the finance director, has looked at the medium term cash flows and way into 2021 as well. So we know kind of where the pinch points are going to be, and so that gives us a bit of time to be able to plan. And so when the time comes, certainly all of these ideas are going to be ones that are going to be given very strong consideration. And if we need to come out and talk about crowdfunding, then we'll get the comms people, Joyce and Murray, and everybody will come out with some, I'm sure, with some very innovative ideas for marketing those out to everybody.
Brilliant. Okay for you, Martin?
Yeah, thank you both. I know I'm very frustrated myself. I'm sure that the rest of the supporters are. It'd be nice to try and get involved, whilst we sit around and actually try and raise some money for the club. I know the club's very well run, and we're very lucky in that respect. And we're probably better off than some other clubs. But it feels we're sitting round. It feels that, especially on my part, I really feel that perhaps I could be doing something. But I trust in the way the club's run, and if help is needed, I'm sure that people will step up.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Martin.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for that, Martin. We've got another fan joining us now on the call. David Philpott. David, thanks for joining us. Feel free to fire away with your question, David.
Hi, yeah. I hope you could hear me. I'm on my phone. I've got a broken laptop computer, but there you go. Just want to first and foremost say a great thank you to Michael Duff and just all the coaching team for what we've done this season, what we've managed to do. My wife's never been happier seeing me happy that Cheltenham are doing well. So just for on record, a great thanks to that. Just wanted to ask again about what's the mood like in the camp? Say obviously players are furloughed at the moment a little bit, and obviously we were on a great run of form, and now it's sort of stopped, and we're going to go to the playoffs, hopefully, if that happens. And just how the lads coping. Is this, they got used to the new normal, or is this like, oh golly, what's happening kind of thing?
Hi, David. No, we've been having communication with the players, and I think what the supporters are probably feeling is no different to us. So me, myself, Micky, the board, we've sat in hours and hours and hours of Zoom meetings, and nearly everyone you go into, there's more questions than answers. And that's happening now. You know, we're now planning to be in on Monday with no playoff date. We don't even know when we're planning for. The mood in the camp is initially there was a few fears for safety of. I don't think the players are so much worried about themselves. It's more we have young players who live at home with parents who might have health issues. Obviously, people are aware of players who have pregnant wives or newborn babies, or again family members that aren't particularly well. So there was a lot of anxiety around that, which is why we were having the Zoom meetings. The doc came in to put players' minds at ease. And then there was the next stage of that as well. How is it going to be done, and with all the testing and things? And the closer we get now, the players are on board now. You know, they want to finish the job now. We've come so far, and it's a case of, right, forget all the noise on the outside, forget what's happened and been on water under the bridge. It doesn't matter where we could have finished, or the facts are we've come fourth in the league, fantastic, but finish the job now. Because fourth and getting beat in the playoffs is not as good as fourth and winning the playoffs, quite clearly. So there will be a real push on the mental side of things. We've had a couple of conversations with people outside of football to try and help as well, because I'm a big believer in it myself anyway. But the general feeling amongst the players is let's get the job done now.
Great. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks for joining us, Dave. Really appreciate that. Thanks very much for coming on.
Thanks, David.
Fantastic. So let's move on to a question, Paul. If I can just ask you this related to furlough situation. This is from Tom O'Driscoll. He says, I'm asking this because due to the recent proposals that the testing regime will cost the club hundreds of thousands of pounds, alongside taking players off furlough and the lack of matchday revenue due to games being behind closed doors, could the playoffs not be seriously detrimental to the financial well-being of the club? How are the club approaching this issue, and will the EFL provide financial support for the playoffs and testing arrangements?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, if at the start of the season, you know, you'd have told me that the playoffs, that we'd be getting into the playoffs and that it'd be likely to cost us a fair bit of money, I'd have told you that you need to have a rethink. But that's exactly where we are. You know, it's the potential is that it could cost quite a substantial amount of money. Players, as you say, will have to come off the furlough. There's the cost of testing, there's the cost of staying in the match. I don't know what that's going to look like. We've been told by the Football League that the return to match protocol will be similar to what they've done in Germany. So I've got a hard copy of the protocols for matches. My German is very good. I think that was an English language version. So we're looking forward to that. And so that gives us an idea of what we've got to do and also what the cost might be. And it's going to be, certainly compared to those clubs that have already, the top three that have already been promoted and the rest of the league that are going to stop playing, the cost of the four playoff clubs is going to be quite a lot more. So we have the four clubs have got together, the cooperation between them has been excellent. And we've been having a meeting with the Football League to discuss these issues and see if we can obtain some. Because, of course, in a normal year, a lot of the extra costs of the playoffs would be covered by the extra gate shares. You know, you're probably going to have sellout home crowds in the semi-finals and the share of a match at Wembley, which is tremendous income, and that goes to pay a lot of the costs. But of course, that's not the case this year, so it's going to need to be thought about a bit differently.
Yeah, and just a question on the playoffs and dates and so on. Richard Alsop asks, will they still be home and away legs? What dates are the EFL aiming for? And will the matches be shown on a free live streaming service for fans that do not have Sky?
At the moment, the plan is for the existing format to be retained. So there would be a home and away semi-final and a final at a neutral venue. In terms of dates, we've been told by the league that they want to get the League Two playoffs out of the way by the end of June. Obviously, that's going to be a tight turnaround. It's not going to give the players and the coaches a lot of time to prepare. But that's the intention at the moment. I think from the league's point of view, there is obviously this issue over a lot of players' contracts finishing on the 30th of June, and they've got a situation whereby probably, certainly the Championship, but also quite possibly League One are going to be going on longer than that. So I think their feeling is that they would like to get League Two done and dusted by the end of June, if at all possible. But we're actually, in terms of the actual specific dates, we're awaiting those from the league. Broadcast was obviously Sky have got a contract with the league to show matches, so you would expect them to be shown on Sky. In terms of whether there would be a free-to-air element or perhaps shown on iFollow, again, we're waiting to hear from the Football League on those. We have asked those questions.
And in terms of obviously, playing the playoffs, the players are going to have to train before that. Just a question from Chris Partler. He says, with news that Northampton and Colchester are over to restart group training with a view to competing in the League Two playoffs, are there any plans for the Robins to do similarly in coming weeks? I know that's been touched on already. And what would the cost of doing so be? And how does this compare with financial benefits? Again, a sort of concern there over the cost of being involved in the playoffs.
Well, financial benefits, obviously, if you go up to League One, you do receive a greater proportion of the central funding from the Football League and the Premier League. It's not, whilst it's obviously very welcome to receive an extra part of the central funding, the big jump within the Football League is when you go from League One into the Championship. So there's not a huge difference between League Two and League One, and a lot of that, certainly in the first year, a lot of that does go in sort of the kind of bonuses that you have to do on promotion and bringing in new players to play at League One level and wage rises and all the rest of it. So probably it wouldn't be a huge benefit financially in being promoted. And obviously, from a football point of view, this is exactly what you want to do. You would, I'm sure, this year, if you're one of the three teams that doesn't go up, you're going to be even more disappointed than normal because you won't have got promotion and also cost yourself quite a bit of money, whilst the rest of League Two is not have to undergo that expense. So, as I say, that's the reason why the four clubs have got together to make some representations to the Football League board.
Thanks very much, Paul. Just a question
then.
then.
In terms of the football side of it, Northampton and teams, they've got no advantage in terms of we're all allowed to train on Monday at the earliest. So there's no need for people to be worrying that they've been training for 2 or 3 weeks longer than what we have. Everyone in the playoffs, the earliest they're allowed to return to training is Monday.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, nice one. Thanks for confirming that, Michael. And just one for you, Micky, if that's all right. On Twitter, we had a question from @Sporty60 and also something Mark Hallowell's also commented on. So these two are linked. If the playoffs happen, will loan players be available? Mark mentions that 2 Hull players tested positive, and of course we've got 2 Hull loanees in Jacob Greaves and Max Sheaf. And just a general view, are loan players going to be available for those playoff games?
Yeah, so in terms of the 5 loan players we've got at the moment, spoken to all their clubs, and they're happy for their players to participate in the playoffs with us. So, and they will be tested with us anyway. So they won't be with their parent club, they'll be with us. So yeah, all those players will be available for us up until the 30th of June.
Good news. Good to hear. I'm sure Cheltenham fans will be pleased with that. And on the topic of loan players, maybe one for both Michael and Micky here. Obviously, it's a tricky one because he's only a loanee at the moment, but Sam Neal asks on our live YouTube chat, is Jake Dorr-Hayes a player you'd like to make permanent in the near future?
Micky?
Okay. Yeah. So Jake's the loan's been really successful for Jake as an individual. Obviously, he's contracted with Aston Villa. Villa haven't made a decision on Jake's future as yet, because obviously their season's still going, isn't it, in the Premier League? So we will have those conversations if and when we know what's happening with him at Aston Villa. But he's very determined at the moment to complete the playoff the season with us, and then we'll take it from there. But not just him, but all our loans have done really well this season for us. And if players were to become available, then obviously we would look to have conversations with them.
Yeah, from a pure footballing point of view, I think it's pretty obvious that you take him in a heartbeat. But he's contracted to a Premier League club at the minute, so we don't know what's happening with him. He'll have aspirations to play as high as he can. So it's not a given that just he's had a good loan spell that he's be desperate to come. But from a pure football point of view, we'll come on to contracts and financial situations, or what we've already touched on, financial things already. There's so much uncertainty. But would you like to keep him next year? No matter what league you're in, yes. But there's so many more questions and bits of the jigsaw that are a lot more complicated than just that simple answer. But he's been fantastic. As the one thing I think we've done well this season, with Micky's help and the staff's help, of course, is the recruitment's been good in terms of loans. It's always a bit of a gamble. Jacob Greaves has been fantastic. Chuck Sheafy in there as well. Tom Nichols is a very good player. Obviously came late and had enough opportunity, but he would have been. And then obviously Owen Evans coming in. So I think the decisions that have been made from the staff's point of view of getting the loan players in have been a factor of why we've had such a successful season.
Absolutely. Now, hoping we've got another fan joining us, Aid Medcalf. We can't see you, Aid, but I think your microphone's on. Can you hear us?
I can indeed, yes. How are you, buddy?
Very good, thank you. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. It's a shame you can't see me, as I've got my lucky jacket on over the top of the famous red and white shirt.
I wish I had one of those lucky jackets as well, certainly for the playoffs, indeed. Great to have you on. Feel free to fire away with a question to whoever you'd like to ask.
Yeah, Michael. This is to Michael Duff. The mini tournament that's about to take place. How are you and the training team and the players preparing both mentally and physically for this upcoming mini tournament? And from a supporter's point of view, obviously the revenue for the club's going to be missing, as there's not going to be any supporters. And I apologise if this has already been answered or questions been asked. But will the TV, will it be going live on TV? Will the TV help? Oh, hang on, you've got me video. There we go.
Yeah, I've just pressed the button. I wanted to see that jacket.
That's it. Technical issues. So yes, that was my question to Michael Duff.
Well, it must be a lucky jacket if you're still wearing it.
I am.
Yeah. It's not for how we're planning. We're planning. It's been really difficult to try and plan because we're still planning in a little bit in the dark. There's still unanswered questions in terms of playoff dates and things, but there's been a lot of meetings just in terms of this is where people have to step up to the mark now. This is why you employ specialist members of staff, i.e. the medical side, the sports science side, because a lot of it now is how do you get players fit enough without breaking them to compete in a competition, to be paid to play 3 games in a week and you've got 14 or 15 training sessions. So it's hard, it is strategic. And then there's the mental side of it as well. We'll be working hard on that. I think the mentality of the group is good. I think it's the one thing that's got much, much better since me and Micky first came in. That's credit to the players. They bought into what we're trying to do. So that that's the tough bit. It's the tipping point of when do you start really ramping it up? But you might break 5 or 6 players in the meantime, but you don't want to go into it undercooked. And unfortunately, there's no magic potion or recipe, and after the event, you might go, well, Exeter did it really well because they did it like that, or Northampton did it really well because they went a completely different way. No one knows what the magic formula is. So we'll be doing it as professionally as we can. We've got good, educated people with knowledge of the game and their area of expertise. We'll be putting it all together and hopefully coming up with the best, fittest team that's mentally ready to go.
Yeah, that's. I mean, that's the end of the. I mean, at the end of the day, no one in their wildest dreams would have thought we would have been anywhere near the playoffs. So all credit to you and this team that you've formulated and bonded together to such a phenomenal way that we're actually in the playoffs. And I think if COVID-19 hadn't kicked in, I think we would have been potentially pushing for the automatics. And that's all credit down to everybody involved with the squad.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Hopefully we can finish the job. That'll be the strap line for the season now is, finish the job.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed, Michael.
In terms of you've asked about the TV facility fees, there is a small TV fee for the two semi-finals. Each leg of the semi-final, each team receives an amount of money, but there isn't one for the final. Again, as I said earlier, this is all on the basis that clubs normally benefit considerably from the gate shares of the matches in the playoffs. So again, this is another reason why we need to ask some questions about it.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know. Thank you, Paul.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Aid. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a good one. And be safe out there.
Take care. Look after that jacket.
Oh, hell yeah. Cheers now.
Right, a question now just regards something that's popped up a little bit recently. I've seen a few League Two chairmen talking about it. And so, Andy, I wonder if you've got a possible opinion on it. And that's possible salary caps with regards in football. And again, if anyone else has a view on it, what are your views on possibly putting salary caps into League Two football clubs?
I'm not sure, to be honest, because in some ways it would suit us. We always have one of the smallest budgets, certainly in League Two, and like we said earlier, credit to the guys that have the hard work they put in, and it just goes to show how far we've come to finish fourth with that budget. So there's teams that have got millions that are thrown at this, and sides like, or teams like Mansfield, who we know have a high budget. Doesn't always pay off. I think they've come 21st this season. So would it be fair? Yes, I suppose it would, for everybody to be on a level playing field. And are there loopholes? Probably. Likes of some of the clubs that have the bigger budgets would probably find those loopholes. But for Cheltenham Town, I can see it being probably advantageous to us.
Nice one. And just related to that again, if Paul, I don't know if you've got an opinion on this one, but just a comment we've had on our YouTube chat for this live broadcast. What's your opinion on a North and South League Two with additional non-league sides added? Again, I know there's been so many ideas going around, and that's another one that I've seen suggested. I don't know, Paul, if you've got an opinion on that, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the old Division 3 North and South formed in 1920 and then switched to a national division. When was that? In the 50s, I think. There's never been any real serious consideration of changing it back for a number of reasons. I think people like the full national competition. I know there's an argument that perhaps you could have bigger crowds if you had more local derbies. But England's a strange country when it comes to travelling about sometimes. Actually, North-South doesn't necessarily mean it's easier to get around. We could be in the South. If you look at the National League, Gloucester City are in the northern one. So they have to go to places like Blythe Spartans. It sort of depends where you get put. You could have to go east-west, or you could have to go from Devon to Essex. It's actually much easier to go, provided the traffic's okay. You've got the M5 and the M6 on one side of the country and the M1 on the other, and that tends to be where most of the football teams go up and down on a Saturday. Anyone that travels to see us away from home will see where the coach is going up and down those two motorways, by and large. So I must admit, I'm of the opinion that if it's not broke, it doesn't necessarily need to be fixed. What's more important is to look at the whole financial model of the way football is run, and a salary cap would certainly form part of that. I'm not sure if a geographical change would really make that much difference. That's only my opinion.
A question maybe for Paul and Andy, whoever fancies taking it, from Steve Fletcher. Could the club release shares for us to buy, for supporters to buy? Is that something that is doable?
Yeah, well, we haven't actually done a rights issue as such for a long time, but we did change the Articles of Association a few years ago. So it's possible at any time for people to buy shares in the football club. The minimum subscription, which we've had for a number of years, is £100. So that is a possibility. I have to say that buying shares, if I'm actually honest, doesn't get you a great deal. You get to ask questions at one of these meetings when we have them, or we had to postpone the one that we were going to have this year because of the coronavirus crisis. But you do get to receive a copy of the accounts and be considered as a shareholder. So certainly, if people are interested in that, then send me an email and I can send back some details.
Okay, brilliant. A question for Michael, and there's two questions, but they're linked, so I'll ask them both together because we've got a lot to get through. It's related to player contracts. Just I'll quickly find it again. Right, there it is. Aaron Browning says, which players are we looking to give contracts to? Will the league we're in next year make a difference to those players? And Mark Hallowell then asks, with regards out of contract players, have there been any talks with players? At least one player has been sorted, as has been suggested by someone on social media recently.
First and foremost, Micky does all the negotiating with the contracts anyway. But obviously, I have an input in terms of with the player, and then Micky deals with the agents really more than anything else. In terms of contracts, there's 3 or 4. There's 2 players that signed a contract in February, so before any of this pandemic happened. The reason why they weren't announced is at the time we just won 6 and 6, so the focus was let's get promoted. We don't want anyone taking their eye off the ball. The 2 players who were Will Boyle and Connor Thomas, they were quite happy for it not to be announced because we were in such a good place. No one wanted any sort of distraction. I say it a lot of the time. Let's get rid of the outside noise. So whether they signed a contract for next year or whether they hadn't, it didn't affect. They were secure and that was it. So that was why the focus was. Alex Adai triggered another year on appearances, so he has another year. And Dan Bowery is slightly different. We've taken up the option on his contract. Micky, correct me if I'm wrong at any point. We've taken up the option of his contract, and to be able to do that, we had to let him know by a certain date legally. The only other player is Archie Brennan, who we have released. Like I said, we're coming back on Monday. And with respect to Archie, he was more of a development phase. Everyone else that's coming back has played in the first team and would be considered first team players. So going into the playoffs, if certain circumstances happened, every single one of them would be. Archie was more so from a health point of view. You wouldn't want him coming in into an environment he doesn't need to. It's unnecessary for him. So that's those. They're all done one way or the other. Like I said, they've all been done a long time before this. As we've mentioned before, and this has been discussed with the players. Unfortunately, the current players that are out of contract, we're not in a position to do anything with at the minute. I don't think we're the only club. We don't know what league we're going to be in. We don't know what budget we have. And I feel for the players, I've got empathy for the players because it is a difficult situation to be in. We're trying to let them know as soon as possible what league we will be in will affect what happens to certain people, no doubt. So it's a really uncomfortable position for us to be in. It's an uncomfortable position for the players to be in. But you can't go shopping if you don't know what you're looking at. It's that. So that's hopefully clarifies it a little bit. I don't know if you got anything to add to that, Mick, or not.
No, like you say, I think we've done quite a few throughout the year, we tied people down throughout the year, didn't we? We did Sean Long, we did George Lloyd, and we did them early as well. So what we've decided to do over the last 18 months is strategically look at getting people tied down as we go along. And we spoke to Connor and Will after Christmas, and we got it all done and dusted in February, and all parties felt it wasn't the right time to announce it. So, but going forward with the other players, obviously I'm having regular conversations with the board, and at the moment, with the way the world is at the moment, we just don't know where we are financially, and we just want to, concentrate on the playoffs right here, right now, and see where we are, and then we can hopefully get a decision to help them as well as ourselves, really.
Like I say, it is very difficult right now, the whole situation, understandably. Just a comment on the YouTube chat, Trevor Mann says, how many players are out of contract in June? Great to have continuity where possible. But just a question from the Fogden brothers. It says, Michael, do you believe that Luke Varney has another season on him potentially to contribute to the team?
Well, these are all discussions I'll be having with the players. I'm not going to have these sorts of conversations on a supporters website. I'm not in a position to talk to anyone at the minute, so I can't speculate one way or the other. There's so many factors that get taken in. So with someone like Reg, everyone knows what we think of Reg, but like I said, we need to factor in so many. And this is not just with him, it's location, it's wage, it's budget, it's league. So it's not a case of do you think someone's a good player or not. There's so many more cogs. So obviously the question was asked about Reg. I've already had conversations with Reg, and I've been honest with the players. I've had these conversations with the players, but I'm not in a position to comment anymore because it wouldn't be fair for me to speculate one way or the other if I've not had that conversation with the player. So that's unfortunate, and we do have quite a few out of contract, and they've all contributed in one way or the other. So the key is let's all get promoted, and if we can't do deals or we can do deals, but the first and foremost is everyone wants a promotion on their CV, because even if you weren't to get a deal somewhere, it's a lot easier to get a deal when you've got a promotion on your CV than what it is when you don't.
Yeah, we've still got a lot of players out of contract, like you say, so that question applies to so many of them. And like I say, conversations definitely ongoing. Let's have a look at some more questions I had in live on the YouTube chat, as well as the ones we've still got to go through that were sent in previously. Alex McNeil says, will we train at Wadham Road at least a couple of times for the players to refamiliarize themselves with the pitch? The pitch is looking good thanks to Matt's hard work.
It's something, again, being discussed in meetings, how we train, where we train. But like I said, this is all only happened in the last few days because we've only actually had to go ahead of when we can start doing. But these are all really good questions, and questions that are getting asked in team meetings, which are then getting asked to the EFL via Paul mainly. That is something that we will potentially try and do. It's logistically doing that. It's not just a case of let's rock up and how players arrive, how they change, how they wash their hands. There's so many moving parts to the whole thing. Ultimately, the pitch is green and got white lines, and it's very green at the minute because Matt has done a great job all season. So it's going to be strange. No matter what, no matter how well you try and prepare for it, you're not going to get a full dress rehearsal. You normally have a full pre-season before your game. You're not going to get that. But these are all things we can't control. So, it's a good question. Probably something we will look to try and do at some point. But it's just getting the players mentally right. I've repeated it 2 or 3 times. It's a huge factor of what we are trying to do.
A question from David Morris. He says, finally, will the club be happy if players such as the captain opt out of playing because of health fears for him and his family? He asks these questions, he says, out of concern for the future of the club, and there's no criticism intended, particularly, personally, if players, maybe for health reasons, like we've heard once or twice in the Premier League, and I think we've mentioned already, some of the players have just had kids. If they choose not to play in the playoff games, what are your thoughts on that?
well, I will answer from a football point of view. This has got nothing to do with football. This is a personal decision. So I don't think it matters what I think, what the chairman thinks, what Paul thinks, what any individual thinks. It's a personal decision. So I'll be having all of these conversations before we arrive on Monday, because if players have got concerns, they need to be honest, because you don't want players coming in with doubt in their mind. If they've got doubt in their mind, they're not going to perform to their full potential. So it's no good for no one. And there'll be no judgment, there'll be no prejudice in terms of, I'm not sure because I've got X reason. Absolutely fine, no worries with that. This is a unique situation. So it's not a case of, I don't think people are going to not come in because they can't be bothered. I don't think that's the case because of what the prize at the end of the rainbow. But in terms of the question will be asked, and no player is under any pressure from anyone within the club, as far as I'm concerned. Then if they're not comfortable for many different reasons, then don't come in. I think supporters would second that. And we'll go into the first game with what we believe is our most ready squad, mentally, physically, emotionally, healthy. You know, lots of factors. And by the way, they need to be able to pass the ball around a little bit as well. There's so many moving parts. Again, I keep saying the same thing because it's true. I'm pretty sure that everyone else in the group would probably second that, I think. And
yeah, definitely. And just a question on Twitter that we had for you, Andy. Quite simply, are you still pleased that you became chairman of Cheltenham Town?
Yeah, it's been a very, very interesting 2 years. Taking over 18-19. At the time, I didn't believe we were in a great position on the field, and that we were a little bit worried, and we needed to make some changes. The changes were made, in my view. The changes were the right changes, and what and who I've brought in along with the board. We've progressively got better. We finished 18-19 in a safe position. This year has just been remarkable, really, with what we've achieved as a football club all round. It's been a great place to be. It's a family. It's the camaraderie with the players, with the staff. You know, you couldn't ask to be in a better place. There's something about Cheltenham Town Football Club, and you know, I'm delighted to be part of it, and I'm very, very proud as well. At the same time, you know, we finished 4th this season. You know, why wouldn't I be happy?
Definitely, nice one. And a question, Paul, for yourself. This is something we've had in from James Crofts, Dan Bevan, and also Gareth, Chris Williams as well. And it all relates to Forest Green tickets. How do supporters get their tickets back for what, of course, was the away game, the Gloucestershire derby that didn't take place? How can they do that?
Yeah, this goes back to what we were saying about season tickets earlier. The first thing to explain with selling tickets for an away game is that you don't actually pay the home team until after the match has taken place, because you know, you sell all the tickets up front, and then after the match you make the payment cost to them. So any money that's been paid for Forest Green tickets is still held by Cheltenham Town, in the same way that any tickets sold by visiting clubs to us for our games at our ground are also held by them, because the matches haven't been played, they haven't taken place. So again, you know, we'll be publicising some information on this, whether, you know, people will have the opportunity to donate the money to Cheltenham Town if they feel that's what they want to do, or if they want to obtain a refund or a voucher or something else. Those are all options that we're going to be making available to people in the next few days.
Certainly. And just another question from Gareth. I was hoping he was going to join us, but he's also sent his questions in. He says, when do the League Two clubs vote on EFL proposals? Is that something that still has to happen, Paul?
Yeah, this has been held up a bit because, I mean, you will have seen a lot in the media that there was 2 weeks ago now, I think, there was an indicative vote whereby the the League Two clubs looked at the cost of testing for the rest of the season. That was the main factor, and they realised it was just going to be too expensive for them all to carry on. So they indicated to the league board that they would rather finish the season, determine the league on average points, and just play the playoffs. League One haven't got to that stage yet. There's still some discussion over whether, I think some of the clubs want to play on and some of them don't. I think there's another meeting on that on Monday, I believe. So that's how holding it all up. At some point, there will have to be a formal vote, but certainly in terms of the playoffs, I think we're all proceeding, and the Football League certainly are proceeding on the basis that the indicative vote is what will happen when the formal vote goes ahead.
And just a question as well we've had on email, Paul from Breton Day. He says, what is the likelihood of a bailout of League Two clubs for the upcoming 2020-2021 season? That's a mouthful.
Yeah, this goes back to the big question of what happens, what's the bigger picture and the longer term picture with regard to football if you can't have crowds inside stadiums. And there's no clear answer on this at the moment. It's probably a bit early to say. What I can say is that certainly we know that the government have got people working on mass gatherings, looking at the science and what the possibilities might be on a return on a phased basis, perhaps, or when that might be. And the football authorities certainly are very aware of it. And in terms of funding everything going forward, until we know when we're going to get a return to mass gatherings, it's very difficult to quantify the size of the problem. Some people have said that there might not be crowds allowed inside football grounds until 2021. Well, if you had that as a definitive, that's the case, January the 1st, 2021 is when you can have crowds again, then you can measure the size of everyone's losses, and you would then be able to look at possible solutions, whether it would be as I say, a bailout from somewhere, or borrowing money, or whatever. But until you can quantify the problem, it's a bit difficult to say. Like a lot of things during this crisis, you can't always act until you've got enough information to be able to make those decisions, and that's been the most frustrating thing.
Yeah, just in terms of that sort of getting fans back in the ground, social distancing situation. This isn't really a question; it's more a statement really from Gary Elliott. He says, "My other thought is how social distancing affects us. Like, he believes it's a load of garbage, but he can't see how we can operate without fans. So I suppose we don't really know yet, because it's still miles ahead of how the EFL are preparing to maybe let us have fans in again. That's something we've got to wait a long time to hear about, I'm guessing."
Indeed, yes.
Okay, nice one. We'll go to another question we've had live on our YouTube chat page. It's from Dave Jennings, and it's for yourself, Michael. How do you feel about playing matches without supporters in the stadium?
It doesn't matter what I feel. It's irrelevant what I feel. The facts are the games are going ahead, and we need to try and win them. So this whole thing this is the situations that we're in. It's, ideally we would have played the season out. Ideally we would have got promoted automatically, but this pandemic has happened. So it's happened. There's nothing we can do about that now. So it's going to be surreal, like I mentioned earlier. And the supporters are probably getting early insight into every meeting we have, because there's a lot more questions than they're getting answers. And welcome to our world. And it's not just football, all across the board. So it will be a little bit strange, but it's going to happen. So whichever team gets their head around that and deals with that the best has got probably the best chance of getting promoted. And there'll be many different angles of attack, many different ways of trying to find the best solution. It doesn't really matter whether I think it's good, bad, or indifferent. Just let's get on with it now and try and finish the job, as I've said 4 or 5 times already.
Mickey, I know obviously the good news is we've got Owen Evans agreed with Wigan until the end of June. Just a question that we had on Twitter: can a goalkeeper be signed in an emergency?
Yeah, it's still the same. Because obviously we've got Scott Flinders, who is still injured. So yeah, we could sign a goalkeeper in an emergency.
And on that, you mentioned Scott's injured, Mickey. We did have a question from Mark saying, obviously Luke Varney had an injury, a slight knock going into the lockdown. Ben Tozer also obviously did his ankle, I think, at Colchester away. If they're available and happy to play in the playoffs, would they be fit to play in the playoffs at the moment?
The only person that's not fit, really not fit, is Scott. You know, Scott's not in a position to train. A couple of lads are carrying niggles because they have been keeping themselves fit. So doing a bit more road running and things like that. So these are things we'll assess. But in terms of the players that were injured, they're all fit. Now, whether they all come back in on Monday, they might not be healthy. They might have tested positive. So that's all information that we'll be trying to gather as soon as we can in the early part of next week, in terms of where are they at physically, because some will have done more than others. Some are naturally fitter than others. So we'll be trying to collate that sort of information as quickly as we can. Obviously, mentally, where are they at? Things like that. So this is all basically fact finding over the weekend and the early part of next week, to try and build a structure to fit into a training program to get the team ready physically. So it is that is the answer. There's only Scott that isn't fit. Now, whether they all turn up on Monday, we don't know that. They'll all get assessed. But you know, Scott isn't fit. But Toes and Reg, they've been working hard in the well, it's not the off season, but it's felt like the off season.
A question for perhaps Andy or Paul. James Pegram asks, is there a workable business model for lower league clubs for the 2021 season, as seemingly will need to pay players without any prospect in the near future of having fans in the ground providing ticket revenue? And related to that, someone says, how long can the club survive without having crowds in at the Johnny Rock Stadium?
Do you want to do that one, Andy, or do you want me to do it?
You go ahead, Paul.
How long? Difficult question to answer. Certainly, we're okay for the short to medium term, but a lot will depend on when we can have the crowds back, what's going to happen with the job retention scheme, whether once the playoffs are out of the way, how much of the playoffs going to cost, we don't know, and then once the playoffs are out of the way, how long would we be able to put people back onto furlough after the playoffs? I mean, certainly that currently is the case with the scheme. But then, when's the new season going to start? And you've got to take people off again. So there's lots of unanswered questions, really. Is there a workable business model? Some people question whether there's ever a workable business model for football. And this is certainly one thing that a lot of people have been thinking about during this crisis. And this is one of the drivers behind these ideas on the salary cap. But I think a lot of people in football, particularly some of the owners that have been putting a lot of money into clubs, they feel that this might be an opportunity for a reset, to have a complete rethink of it. Because really, one thing that seems clear is that football at every level seems to work along the same lines, is that the vast majority of money that comes in just goes straight back out again on playing staff. And it doesn't leave much else for things like trying to build up your academy, trying to improve your ground, trying to put aside cash reserves for when something like this happens. So the whole idea behind salary caps and limiting squad sizes is to try and get some controls really back into football, because owners and directors, chairmen of clubs are worried that certainly since the Bosman ruling in 1995, all the power has been with the clubs and the agents, and the clubs have not really been able to control things. Now, of course, that is going to rely on everybody playing ball and people not getting carried away and wanting to spend money on getting a new centre forward in because they've got a chance of promotion, which is, as we all know, that's what happens. But certainly there seems to be a mood at the moment that those controls need to be brought in.
I'm aware that we're almost coming up to an hour of our live broadcast, so we'll probably have to wrap it up soon. And we've had so many questions, we've covered so many things. Just a couple more, if that's okay, on a range of different subjects. And I want to just focus a little bit on crowdfunding and how Cheltenham Town supporters feel they can financially support the football club, as we've heard in many ways, through giving their season ticket money or keeping it with the club. But some people here, just a question, for example, from Adam Hiscox. He says he's been a fan for over 30 years, but he'd be interested to know how the fans can help with finances given the missed games this year and the increased cost of hosting games next season. Many supporters understand they're in a hard position themselves, but they also want to make sure that CTFC can survive. And You know, we've got questions here about possibly could the fans do crowdfunding? Is there any potential crowdfunding from the football club to try and raise money that otherwise isn't coming in through fans paying on the game?
We did touch base on this earlier, and I think that would be a way forward, crowdfunding. It is uncertain, and it really is uncertain times. We could put a cash flow together. It changes all the time. So until we really have some sort of idea of when crowds can come back in to watch football matches, when the season will kick off, all these bits and pieces, whether I follow or be allowed, it just leaves a void at the moment. But I think, yeah, it would be a really good idea to sort of get the crowd on side, the fans on side, and do some crowdfunding in the future. Definitely.
Well, I know Paul also knows about this, but I think in our marketing meeting, we've got a crowdfunding idea, hopefully for the playoffs, which we're hopefully going to put into play, which is quite unique. So just a slight one there for fans to maybe keep their eye out on that if we do actually, press the box and get it going, definitely. But, again, just a question here from a K2Hey, I think I'm pronouncing that right. Why has the club not done any crowdfunding already? You know, gate money advance pledging us has been suggested by fans and done successfully by other clubs to provide financial support to retain players. Why have we not done that as a football club already? You know, is there a reason for that? He's asking.
Again, as I said earlier, anything like that, we want to make it part of a coordinated strategy. We're trying to plan for the whole of this. We're trying to plan scenarios to get us through the entire period of the problem, no matter how long that might be. And so certainly for the time being, from a cash point of view, we are okay. We're working month to month with it, but we've done cash flows from it for the medium and long term. So it may well be that the time will come when we do need to go out and do a crowdfunding campaign. That will form part of our strategy over the coming weeks and months, if indeed it is needed. We're very conscious that a lot of people are finding it very difficult at the moment. People have lost their jobs, people have been furloughed, they're not receiving their full wages, people are self-employed, or people who've got small businesses, particularly in areas like the hospitality sector. They haven't got that spare capital that they can use to help their local football club. So we're very conscious that we don't want to be going around cap in hand unless we need to. But certainly, if and when we feel the time is right to launch a crowdfunding campaign, that's certainly something. We're very fortunate in Murray Toms. We've got somebody with that expertise as an associate director of the football club. So that's certainly something we can do, and there's every likelihood that we will at some point.
I think if you relate it to football, it's the club don't want to panic buy, as in they don't just want to do the first idea, get the best idea. And it's the same with the recruitment. You don't want to go and just buy anyone. You want to go and get the best player you can. So there's processes that are being put in place. So supporters might be thinking there's nothing going on. There's lots and lots going on at every level of the football club, trying to come out with the best outcome that leaves the club in the best state, whether that's on the field or off the field. So I think that is key that supporters don't think, because it's been a little bit quiet. There's nothing going on. We're just sitting on our hands. That's not the case at all.
And one final question we had in on email. It's an interesting idea from a supporter. He's suggesting maybe the playoffs should go straight to penalty shootouts. You'd only need 5 players and a couple of goalkeepers, easily to social distance, no contact, no need for extra training, all played at the same neutral venue in one day. Would that be far less stressful?
No. No, absolutely not. We've worked very hard this season to come forth, and that's not been down to penalty shootouts. It's been down to the hard work that Michael and the staff have put in, and the way we've played, the players. To think for 1 minute it would come down to a penalty shootout would be a horror story, really, for me.
Well, it might come down to that, but if we can guarantee Connor Thomas takes every penalty, we might be all right.
Yeah.
He has indeed got a very good record. Brilliant. Well, I think we're there. We've had an hour. We've had some fantastic questions in online. We've had some fantastic questions sent in beforehand, and of course, we're delighted that so many fans came and joined us live on the chat as well. Just want to say a massive thank you to you guys as well. Obviously doing a huge amount behind the scenes through all of everything that's been going on, to try and make sure that Cheltenham Town can start playing football again, hopefully in a few weeks' time, and hopefully it'll be a very successful achievement, hopefully come the end of June, if we potentially get into League One. So big thank you for everyone for tuning in, really appreciate it. We may do something like this again soon at some point, to try and get the fans a bit more communication through this sort of form with the people you want to hear from. But Andy, Michael, Micky and Paul, a massive thank you, really appreciate your time for joining us today here on the Cheltenham Town website, and also for all the fans for joining us as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I just say finally, in memory of Alec Carson, Justin Cook and Roger Thorndale, and when all of this is over, we'll be looking to honour them properly in whatever ways we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very true. Yeah.
Definitely.
Cheers, Joyce.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye.